Corinne Busche has been hired by Wizards of the Coast, or at least a subsidiary company that's owned by them called Skeleton Key. And when you start diving into the backgrounds of the people hiring this dude, you see how the nepotism is actually just as much of a problem in the game industry as diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. Now, apparently a rumor got started late last night, very early in the AMs, spreading from a channel called Diversity and Dragons, which doesn't typically cover the game industry, but in their video they stated that this was something that was a rumor that they had heard from an insider but were not able to confirm it.
Breaking news. It's actually not news. It's more of a rumor. So I'm going to give the official Doomcock disclaimer. This is a rumor. Take it with a grain of salt, etc., etc. I think I've told many of you that I have a couple of sources inside Wizards of the Coast. And one of them reached out to me and said, hey, you may want to hear this. This is this current scuttlebutt. And it involves kind of a crossover with video games. Corinne Busche. This is their Blue Sky social account. As you can tell, Corinne is a man baby who's LARPing at being a woman. Why do we bring Corinne up? Because Corinne was given the game director title for Dragon Age Veilguard, which means that the responsibility for the catastrophe fell on his shoulders. And you wonder how he even got such a plush job with only really one game designer credit before. May have had something to do with identity and representation, perhaps. But the fallout from the Dragon Age Veilguard catastrophe is only now being felt.
Fast forward to this morning, I open up my email and I have a new whistleblower that's like, hey, Smash, I watched your content and I saw you talking about Corinne Busche, and yeah, that person that nobody wants working with them is working with them. Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down how I had an insider from Wizards of the Coast reach out to me and tell me that, yeah, Corinne Busche has been hired by Skeleton Key Studio, and not many people are very happy about it. In a move that will no doubt raise eyebrows throughout the entire gaming community, I've been tipped off by an insider that Wizards of the Coast has quietly hired Corinne Busche, the failed director from Dragon Age the Veilguard and BioWare, leaving that company crumbling by the wayside, to now go work at a newly formed studio called Skeleton Key. This newly formed studio came together at around 2022 and has not put out any games yet officially. According to my anonymous source inside of Wizards of the Coast, Busche's hiring wasn't announced publicly, but my exclusive source said specifically, and I quote, I just heard a rumor that Corinne Busche had been hired by Skeleton Key, but sure enough, I checked my team's org chart and he's there. And they followed that up with another quote that I'm not going to show all of it because it may give away who they are, but I'll show the second part saying, but I'm not pleased about this turn of events. So right now we already showed that there's internal strife going on at Wizards of the Coast for hiring this extremely controversial figure. And when you start diving into the background of, oh, Corinne Busche used to work at BioWare alongside, guess who? The head of Skeleton Key Studio, along with, guess what? Other people from BioWare have gone to work at Skeleton Key. And then you see images being shared by the leads over at Skeleton Key, and it all just makes sense. So Corinne Busche was instead quietly discovered by my source instead of being announced publicly. Now, after this news comes out, I'm sure they'll be making a public statement to announce it, to try to paint this in a great light, like, oh, what a big, great thing it is. But we all know what really is happening behind the scenes. For those unfamiliar who Busche is, a biological man who identifies as transgender, I want to give a quick refresher. He was one of the key figures of Dragon Age the Veilguard and the failure that that game had was heavily criticized for pushing extreme gender ideology and woke politics at the expense of any kind of quality storytelling and gameplay. His approach alienated longtime fans of Dragon Age series who felt like the game was far more concerned with forced representation than delivering any kind of RPG fantasy experience that so many gamers had come to love over the previous titles in the series. And it's something that people are very frustrated about. They want these people to be held accountable for ruining their games and potentially burning their studios to the ground. But what we're seeing right now is the complete opposite. Somebody who is failing upward. And while Skeleton Key Studio has not put out any games yet, many people are pointing to the announced game coming out of Skeleton Key and Archetype Entertainment called Exodus. Archetype Entertainment has a lot of veterans that came from BioWare and even Bungie. Those people that worked on Baldur's Gate, Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age Origins, and even Mass Effect all coming together to work on Exodus. And there were a ton of gamers excited for this title in particular when it was first announced. Now that Corinne Busche is headed over to Skeleton Key, it's going to make people question any kind of excitement they had for this game if he is the one that will be the game director on it. Because in the screenshot that got sent to me by my insider, it states Corinne Busche, game director. So I'm making the leap that I'm assuming it's on Exodus, or it could be an unannounced title that nobody knows about yet. But regardless of what game he ends up working on, it's going to make everyone look at this studio a lot closer. The backlash against the Veilguard was swift and quite overwhelming. Electronic Arts reported during their quarterly earnings call that the game came up about 50% short of their sales expectations, and gamers outright rejected its pandering tone and cartoonish aesthetics. It marked one of the most embarrassing reveals in BioWare's history, and recently, that's saying something. You're going through Anthem, Mass Effect Andromeda, and now Dragon Age The Veilguard, alongside potential canceled titles that never came out, and how many times they redid The Veilguard. It's like, how many times could BioWare fail before they close the studio? And then you turn to the people that are causing it to fail, and you see that they're jumping ship before the ship goes down to destroy them somewhere else. Bush's hiring at Skeleton Key seems to have been deliberately kept under wraps, most likely to avoid backlash from the gaming community, and that would be my best assumption here, hoping that any memory of him would just fade away into the abyss. And Wizards of the Coast is no stranger to controversy, as its mishandling of Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering over the past few years have already put them in hot water with a lot of longtime fans of those series. Now with Busche on board, it looks as though they're doubling down on the same identity-driven political approach that's been rejected time and time again by gamers, yet here they are, doubling down, some could say even tripling down on it, saying, yeah, we don't care what you want and what you don't want. We're going to feed you the slop, and you're going to take it. And as I was referencing earlier, nepotism in gaming is a major issue these days. And with DEI being under such a microscope of so many gamers, it's taken on a life of its own. Upon further research, Skeleton Key is led by the former BioWare Austin boss, Christian Daly, who has described its first project as a AAA title focused on immersive gameplay and unique storytelling. Hopefully no barves are involved with this, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I can't help but connect the obvious dots behind the scenes here and say, something smells very suspicious on what's happening. The studio's direction could be in serious jeopardy after Busche is now involved, considering his track record of prioritizing activism over any kind of quality gameplay design. Hiring this dude was a massive risk, and based on a past performance, it's gotta make you wonder, why would a studio in the modern state of gaming continue to go down a path that has been time and time rejected by the vast majority of paying customers? People that want to purchase games do not want to support these kinds of causes. Any company that hired Busche is going to be taking a massive risk, not just in terms of potential financial losses, but also in terms of reputational damage. His tenure over at BioWare demonstrated a complete unwillingness to listen to any actual player feedback, and his involvement with the Veilguard turned what could have been a highly anticipated RPG into the laughingstock of the entire video game industry for years. and maybe generations to come. Now, with Wizards of the Coast already struggling to maintain goodwill from its player base, adding a controversial figure like Busche into the mix only raises even more concerns about the company's potential future. It's no wonder they wanted to keep this hiring quiet, because they all know exactly just how bad this looks and how the entire gaming industry was watching to see what was going to transpire. So Corinne didn't update his LinkedIn. There wasn't any kind of major announcement from the studio at Skeleton Key or Wizards of the Coast. No one said anything. But now that it's out, I would imagine we're going to be hearing that, oh, hey, let's spin this in a positive. Like, look who we got. A famed director of a game that historically the series has sold millions upon millions of game copies, so this is a great thing. Wizards of the Coast's decision to bring Corinne Busche on board at Skeleton Key is yet another sign that there are still companies out there moving further and further away from what most gamers actually want to play. If the failures of Dragon Age: The Veilguard weren't enough to prove that Busche's vision for gaming is completely out of touch with reality, then only time is going to be able to tell how much damage he can do to Wizards of the Coast, which was already, many would argue, a sinking ship to begin with. One thing's for certain though, the backlash is coming. No matter what they try to hide and pretend isn't a big deal, people are going to find out, people are going to keep tabs, and people are going to ignore purchasing these types of games from these types of people because they don't want to support seeing people continue to fail upward in this world. That's not what merit-based is. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want more information, check out my article on smashjt.com. I will link it in the description below. If you appreciate what I'm doing, hit that join button. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing. Smash,